Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. This is Roy. Of course, we are the podcast that brings you a wide variety of guests to talk about a lot of diverse topics. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know, but also sometimes we are looking for that helping hand and don't know where to turn. So hopefully we can provide those answers for you. Today, we're fortunate enough to have Kris Ward. She's an author, podcaster, coach, speaker, and she talks about team building and system strategy. She's a leading authority on building your business by building your team. Kris is the founder of the Winning the Hour, Winning the Day philosophy. She helps entrepreneurs create their W.I.N team and what is next using her signature super tools kit so you can get your idea to implementation and make your ambitions come alive. After the loss of her husband, Kris returned full-time to her work as a marketing strategist. She was thankful to see that her business had not only survived in her absence, but was thriving. Now, Kris has completely changed the landscape for entrepreneurs by sharing the successful practices that allowed for her absence. So, Kris, we want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us. I love the title of the book, Win the Hour, Win the Day. That was one reason I was interested in speaking with you, because typically once we let that first hour get away, it seems like the rest of the day goes with that. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roy. I'm so excited to be here. I'm all about talking about people, processes, and performance. And we just, we can always do that better and better, right?
Yes, exactly. And the other thing too, a lot of times, especially with the pandemic, people have fallen into a position of entrepreneurship or being in business, and they really didn't plan on this, haven't really thought it out, and so now they find themselves in a position of where do we go next. And I think it's also good to talk about, if you want to start a business, then it's good to start at the very beginning to kind of visualize what that team is going to look like, surround yourself with good people. So those are all things that we can certainly jump in and talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And when you broach that subject, the first thing I can probably hear as people are driving around in their cars right now, they're thinking, are you kidding me? I can't afford a team. I mean, that's one of the things we get right off the bat. That sounds lucrative and expensive and like a luxury. And that's what I'm here to address, you guys. I'm here to dive right in and dispel the myths that this is not the case. And I promise you, if you've got gas in the car or you have a coffee in your hand, we can help you out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not only, I can't afford it. There's some solutions we can talk about, fractional people, but I think also it's planning for the future, because what I've typically seen in my practice is it's like, we needed somebody 6 months ago. We're just now coming up for air and realizing it. What do we do? And I think that's where, if we can plan, at what points in growth, who do we need to add? And then also another thing to, I think, kind of talk about is the, sometimes as the business owner, we have a skill, which may be sales. So instead of us wasting our time on that back end, doing the accounting and doing other stuff when we should be selling, having the right team members in the right place to let everybody, utilize their skill set, I guess.
100%.
Yeah. So I guess let's just start at the beginning. When should you start thinking about a team? When should we start that process?
Well, I would tell you the day you think you're going to start a business, really, honestly, it's ground zero. I mean, anything done well in the history of time, they had a team. Where would we be if Steve Jobs was in the garage, still trying to, well, may he rest in peace. He wouldn't still be there tinkering it out. But it's really about when you're going to start anything, because no matter what you're going to do, you need to be able to leverage that really quickly, especially in the beginning, you guys, when you feel like you're short on time and money.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you make a good point that we probably need to stop and drive home. Is a lot of truly successful people who we know their name and their success. There were other people involved. There were teams, there were larger teams, of course, that surrounded them. But, Steve Jobs is a good one. I can't think of the guy's name. I think it was Wozniak was his name. Microsoft, there were two of them. Hewlett Packard, 2 people. So it's sometimes when we try to go it alone, we can just really stifle our growth, our creativity, and get really bogged down.
Well, there really is no doing it alone. So what I would say to you is really being an entrepreneur is about getting ideas to execution. And so anyone that professional jealousy online, or you're like, how do they keep getting all this stuff done? Right. It's
Right.
because they're getting ideas to execution. And that's it. It's ideas to execution. And too many entrepreneurs, you're caught up in the busyness of the admin, the web of admin. And really what you should be is you should be in a higher percentage of creation than anything else. So most entrepreneurs are in about 80% creation, 80% admin, and you should be about 60% creation, 40% admin. Because you are like the captain of the ship. You need to be outputting whatever that is. Like for you, Roy, nobody else can do these interviews if it's going to be your podcast. So this is a creation element for you, and whether it's a podcast, a book, or coaching, or being out in social media with your videos, you need to be in creation mode far more than you need to be in admin mode.
Right. We just had that conversation the other day. Me and my partner, we were talking about that. We were kind of getting to that point that we are getting bogged down in that admin and doing all the back end stuff. And there was a study for kids, but it applies to us entrepreneurs as well, is that we also need time to be creative. If you're so busy in the churn of the day, when do you ever really have time to stop and think about that creativity? So being able to build that team, to have trusted people that we can delegate to, it may give you time to go take that 30-minute walk that you need to be creative, to solve a problem, different things like that.
Yeah, that's how the brain works. It's really like running, jumping hurdles. Like when you're always thinking about where's the next place I need to be, the brain just does not operate in that capacity as far as creativity goes. And anything done, when we look back to right from Newton with the apple, these things were all done in times of relaxation or play. And that's just how the brain works. But I know when you're out there and you care so much about your business, you think, oh, no, my brain works differently. I mean, I read all these studies when I was, years ago. And of course, I refreshed my memory when I wrote my book. But I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm very driven. I'm very organized. I'm very this. Somehow my brain eludes all the other science that's out there. And it's just not the case. You're just jumping through hoops, really.
Yeah, and that's always the good one that I hear a lot. Is like, well, we're different, so but the
Yeah,
big
yeah,
difference, we're all the same.
yeah.
So we get mired down in it, and I'll speak from I'll throw myself under the bus and say sometimes it's maybe a control issue that we think, I can't teach anybody to do this, or it's going to be more problems to try to teach them to do it. And so I think another big thing, especially when we're delegating, is that step where we can say somebody else can really do this, and the chance that they can do it better are probably higher than the chance that they can't do it at all. So I think some of that's that letting go. This is, the businesses are our babies, and we don't want anybody else really touching it or getting their hands in there. But if we're going to grow it and if we're going to be successful, I think we have to get over that fairly quick.
Yeah, I mean, people refer to that all the time. It's our babies. But if you think of your baby, you get a lot of help with your baby. You had a doctor and teachers and relatives, and, you needed a break from your baby, right?
Right.
So if it is your baby, then take care of your baby, right? Because we live in this world that I think is a lot of copy and paste, a lot of pre and post production. So let's say you're right, Roy, and let's say that somebody can only do it 70, 80% as good as you. But if you have 3 people doing something 70, 80% as good as you can, wow, you just leveraged your time.
Right.
So that makes such a difference there.
Yeah, exactly. And, the other thing was that, well, had an awesome thought. It just like evaporated there. So anyway, well, let's talk about, so what are mistakes that that some people make? They finally, they finally made the decision. We're going to build a team. So what do we need to do to make that right, where we're not just spinning and before we move on to that, one other point on the last thing we're talking about when we try to do everything is, I think we have to also be cognizant of the fact that businesses don't always fail because they don't have enough business. There are a lot of people that get in trouble because they have too much business. They do
Mm-hmm.
too good at marketing, or they have a good product or good price, whatever the combination. Then they're overwhelmed, and they can't fulfill their orders, and they have people get mad, and then they end up, struggling because of that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Roy. And also, I would say too, the inability to get more business is just a reflection on the fact that you're caught up again in the admin work, and you go from feast to famine. So you're like, oh, got a new client, I got some new business. And then you get in the trappings of setting that up or giving the new project attention. And,
Right.
and then you get distracted. You're like, oh, and then when the time you need business is not the time to go looking for new business. So it's the inconsistency is what creates problems in your income. And that's again from not having what I call super toolkits and a win team.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's common for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. It's like, we market, have a big bust or a big boom. And then so now we're so busy fulfilling whatever our service or product is, no marketing, that dries up, and we start this cycle. And it's, it can be devastating because you never know. And so anyway, let's talk about building the teams though. So what are some bigger mistakes that people make when they're trying to put their team together?
Yeah, you know what, Roy? That's probably the number one question I get at our website, www.winthehourwintheday.com. And what I want to share with you right now is really, it's going to surprise people. But the biggest mistake is, I think, diluting the talent. Everyone, this whole new buzzword of having a VA. Yeah, VA is a great place to start, a virtual assistant. You've got many choices now that you're very affordable and highly skilled talent. And I mean, that could be a whole show just in itself. But what happens is somebody will get someone and say, oh my gosh, you know what? Let's say they do their hiring and onboarding and all this stuff magically, and it's beautiful because it's not rocket science, but it did take me a lot of years to learn how to work out the kinks and to really make it systematic and highly efficient so that we're always hiring really top-notch talent for myself and for my clients. Now, let's say you do all that, right? The important thing is great. You go, wow, okay, Sarah is amazing. And then what happens is you think, oh, she's really good at this. Let's see if we can get her to do that. Maybe she can do some posts on social media, or maybe she can get me this done, or we need this graphic tweaked. And all of a sudden, you're diluting that talent, and when you think about any other industry, most recently, I think I'm the last person in the world to discover the cooking channel. And I've become addicted to these cooking shows where they compete. And you know what? A chef, a really 5-star Michelin chef with, cooking books that won awards for and everything, they'll say, well, I specialize in this kind of cuisine or Asian cuisine, or I don't know how to bake. I'm this kind of chef, right? But yet in our business, we think, oh, well, we'll just start asking them to do a whole bunch of different things. And then 4 months down the road, you're like, the wheels kind of fell off. What happened? I really liked her in the beginning. She liked being here. This was great. And now all of a sudden we're not getting the results because you had them running around ad hoc doing all kinds of crazy different things. So you get excited with a little bit of success and then you dilute it. That's one of the biggest mistakes.
Okay. So what can we do to, I guess, how can we help ourselves by not diluting that, and by, because when you have people that work for you, it can be a struggle because we have to give them what they need. And a lot of time they look to us for that guidance, not only the emotional, hey, you're doing a good job, or we need to tweak this, but also, maybe getting work to them, and the consistency in that. So what are some things that we can do better?
Yeah, the interesting piece about that is it's not hard. It's really not. It's just strategic, but it's definitely not hard. So what I tell people is, be mindful that you stay in one lane. Now, when I say that, don't worry, guys. I'm not talking about having 10 people because they all got 10 different things that they're doing for you. I have, as Roy mentioned, I have a podcast, Win the Hour, Win the Day podcast, where we talk a lot about just general business. So you get your next win now. I have a book, we've got info products. I do coaching. I do all these things. I'm a speaker, but I have a team of 5 and I've had them for a very long time. So we run we've got pretty ambitious goals, even for the next year. I'm going to be working on my second book, all kinds of stuff. And half that team, I'd say 3 of them have been with me about 7 years now. So I'm not talking about having somebody for everything. I'm not. but you want to make sure that that person in that lane is, you're really clear on where their job begins and ends. And when there are times where you go, she's really good at this, maybe that would lend to this other thing, great, but you have to be strategic about that. And what I would say, some simple things you can do is, make sure that you have steps in play, because business is not run on memory. I mean, imagine this, nobody hands somebody at FedEx in Oregon to get to a Chicago hospital for a transplant and says, you've got the address, right? Like, that's not how it goes. So something as simple as, if you're hiring somebody and you say, okay, don't try to do all the systems yourself and say, I'm going to do all this, because they're going to be flawed the first time somebody tries to use them, because you're going to realize, oh, we're missing that step or this password. So you can grab a screen capture like Loom, it's free, and you can do something. And then you could just say, okay, here's the video. This is what I've done. I want you to try it, watch the video. And can you write out the steps when you do it, so that next week we can tweak that and add to those steps. And then we also have it all written out, what this person's responsible for. We call that our job bio. We're always adding to the team's job bio to make sure we're really clear on what they have going.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I frequently recommend from the very beginning to write these processes and procedures down, because the other thing that what we want to do is tweak those processes where we get the best output. But there's also the other side of that. Somebody gets very good at their job and their position, and then they leave, and it's like, well, what was that person even doing? How did they get this stuff done? So it's important to protect us as the business, that we need to know how to carry on. So, I always tell people, and these are living dynamic documents. It's not, you write it once, put it on the shelf, and you never look at it. It's something that should be taken out frequently, updated. If we have a new vendor, a new system, a new routine, those things all need to be documented. So the next person, and it may not even be that they quit, maybe they had to go out on maternity leave or some kind of a FMLA leave, and they're just gone and unreachable, but we still need to know how to carry on without them.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Or what I tell my team all the time is, maybe you're going to be promoted. And so we don't want to hold that up. We want somebody else to be able to slide into your place really quickly and efficiently. I know for us, I had a virtual assistant, and she was with me for over 7 years. Now, never mind how much my company had grown in 7 years. The world and technology and our resources had changed so dramatically in 7 years. And for a couple of reasons, it was time for her to move on with her family and blah, blah, blah. And we, in the middle of our first launch for Info Product, the outsourcing playbook for busy entrepreneurs, the middle of that, we hired a new VA, and she was up to 80% capacity within a week. And it didn't slow us down at all. But I've had, business friends that reached out and literally sent me a little crying emoji saying, oh my gosh, my VA just left. She quit. I don't know even where to start, what to do. And she's beside herself because, it's the tail wagging the dog. And you don't have any systems in play to make them more efficient. Or it's not a business. You've just now leaned on what I call Ethel syndrome. You've got Ethel in the office that knows where everything is. And if Ethel leaves, you're kind of messed up.
Right. Yeah. And I do some work with employee retention. And so that's one thing, is putting the emphasis on that front end and making sure, that we get the right person. And that's not always skill set. I try to say that, we need the attitude, because I can teach people eventually whatever I've got going on. It's not nuclear science. So I can we can get that part figured out, but they need to have that can do, get along attitude, which is very important. So anyway, I think it just, it lends itself to say that we need to give some consideration to our hiring processes and procedures to make sure we're getting that right person that we can mold to begin with.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. We call it our pass model. Do they pass? And to me, it's personality, because we always hire personality over skill set, because you can change a skill set, you can't change a personality. Right. Then we call it action, and we give little mini tests before we hire them, just to see the actions they take and how they respond to our email, things like that. And then success. I often ask them, what's a success for them? It's very telling when you ask somebody what's one of their successes on the story they give you. And then, of course, there's skill set. You do have to have some skill set, but really that's the last in our past, formula. It's personality, action, success, skill set. And that really changes everything, because there's a lot happening out there right now as this becomes more mainstream. And one of the other things I hear a lot is there's now agencies that will say, well, we can give you a VA and we've vetted them and done all this amazing stuff. And a lot of my coaching, my group coaching clients have come to me and said, oh, I went through them. I was committed to this contract. It didn't work out. And they were supposed to be this, the experts on that. But what happened was they had somebody that they don't know anything about your business. And so they have Jane over here and they give you Jane, you're new, Jane's new. You don't have really effective systems in play. So it's a double blind and it doesn't pan out, where it's not, again, rocket science. You're right, Roy. But when you're working with us, what we do is really important to make sure you're set up properly and effectively. And you can bring somebody on, like lots of times in our group coaching, we'll have found and recruited and done all the done for you and done with you for our clients. But the VA might start off 3 hours this week, 6 hours next week, and it's gradual. So it's really simple steps, but if they're not done in the right order, it just falls to pieces.
Yeah, we need to, I wrote a piece not long ago and I just put, to recruiters and to, the managers, is that we need to remember our first day on the job, and there's a lot of stuff flying at you, and it doesn't matter if you're doing the same, if you're working in, let's say, WordPress or something. I have a different process for what I want to see as the output than somebody else may want to. And so because I told somebody that on day one, minute 6, along with 4,000 other things, it's hard, we can't expect them on Thursday to be like, what was the deal on that again? And that's where we get back to the clear, precise processes and procedures, but also give people a break and know that they're not going to absorb every detail that they need to be awesome at their job just because we sat down and talked to them for 4 hours straight.
Yeah. And I know back in the day when I was struggling with my own processes and I was working insane hours, it was nuts. The first couple of years in my business, this is how it all unfolded. I realized, oh my gosh, first of all, I went, I think 2 years without sleep, and reports indicated I wasn't as charming as I thought I was after 2 years without sleep. So people kind of sit you down and give you an intervention like, listen, you used to be nice, but not so much. And what I would tell you is back then, I'd be racing along at high speed. I call myself now a recovering rushaholic, and I'd expect everyone to keep up with me. And I think I had this great idea. And then I'd realize, oh, I had that great idea 4 months ago. It just never got implemented because we're just racing and going what I called hysterical mode all the time. So the beauty of having what we call our super toolkits in play too is when we tweak it or do something or add to anything, we can do it instantaneously because we are following that process. And and processes, let me segue for a second. That sounds boring and draining, but you guys are thinking about it back in the corporate world where it was really there to cover liability, not to be user-friendly or to be tweaked by you. It usually came from above and it was very dry and not helpful. So the steps we have in play is really about being super efficient so that you can, again, compress your admin time, increase your creation time, and add stuff on a dime. And not go, oh yeah, didn't we do that last year? Yeah, we did. And then we ran out of paper, we stopped doing it, and blah, blah, all that kind of fun stuff.
Right. So what are some of the biggest myths that you hear from people about team building?
Biggest myths. Well, money is one of them. It also another big one that we get, is the amount of work it takes to do it. And I can see why this is out there because most people, I'm told all the time that we do it very differently than everybody else out there. And so what happens is there is this concept of, okay, you get some help, you get a VA, you do whatever, and then you're giving them work. So really what you're doing is you're taking work off your desk, putting it on theirs, but now you have to manage them. So really you've now given yourself a second job. But I would tell you that's a flawed premise. That's, upside down. My team manages me. And that's the idea, is to set them up so that they move you forward. You're not supervising them. They're empowering you, right? That's the difference. So it's a myth, but it's kind of, I don't know if it's a myth because it's taught out there and a lot of people are doing it wrong. That's a harsh word, but they're doing it less effectively. So it's an active myth. Let's make new language up, Roy.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no, you're right. I think again, it gets back to hiring the right people and giving them the tools that they should be helping us move forward, not feeling like a boat anchor. Because, I'll tell you, I've been in that position, be like, wow, I just hired somebody to help me, and now I'm working twice as hard just to keep up.
Yeah, we have our a team meeting every Tuesday, and we have a student, which you guys can all have students as well. In fact, if you go to www.freegiftfromkris.com, we just put something up about how to get 200 free hours from a student from your, no matter where you live. We're on maybe our 30th student, but this year alone, we've had 4, and they're co-op students, and each semester they have to do 200 hours, and they're like in grade 11 and 12. But listen, they come into the world with a phone in their hand now. So they're pretty high tech stuff. So we were having our team meeting today, and our student, even he knew the meeting was wrapping up, and I was like, okay, great, we're done. Anybody's got any questions? And he said, oh, I'm supposed to do a presentation on this subject you asked me last week. He knew that when I said the meeting's over, I had forgot he was supposed to do that presentation. It's his job to stop me, get my attention, and say, no, we need time for this. Yeah. And most other setups would be next week. Oh, sorry, you said the meeting was over and blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to interrupt you. That's not how we run it. Like, your job is to make sure that you are heard, that you can't come to me and say, oh yeah, we're going to get that email out, but remember I asked you for a picture and then you didn't get me the picture. That doesn't fly. Their job is to manage me. So we stopped, he did his presentation. It was fantastic. But even the student knows that's how we operate. Your job is to manage me.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to empowering our people that work with us and work for us, because I had a young lady just the same, and she was an awesome worker, did great work. She's very quiet and very timid. And so I'd say, hey, can you research this or look this up or do whatever? A couple hours later, I'd look up and think, oh, I haven't heard from her. And she'd be like, oh yeah, I finished that. I'm like, okay, well, it's okay to tap me on the shoulder, pass me a note, send me an email, so once we kind of walked through what that looked like, then things became much better. But, I guess not only was she young and just out of college, but also we have to take into account other people's experiences at other companies that maybe they were told to do it the wrong way or not the way we wanted, or there were inhibitions for them or whatever. So anyway, it's very good to have that conversation and make sure that they understand, what we expect from them.
Yeah, and that's part of our onboarding process, because you're right. A lot of different workplace cultures, they're taught to be obedient, like school. They're parentified, and that's not how we roll, right? So we teach them right up front. We go through. We have an onboarding process, and we have a little sheet that give them all these things that matter and that really matter to us, as well as a little video. And we say, look, you're going to hear this from us again and again. We're looking for you to think. We don't want you to be obedient. Of course, that means, follow the process and do the work, but it means not just sitting there nodding your head. Yes, you're here because we thought you were a bright light and you can contribute to us. So we upfront let them know that the culture here is this way, and this is what really matters to us. And the number one thing you hear from us in the beginning always is communication, super important to us.
Yeah. Yep. No, you're right about that. All right, Kris. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. Is there any other points that you want to make about team building before we get out?
Well, just that it is the everything to your business. And unless you're doing that, you're a sufferpreneur. That's really it. So it really isn't a business unless you can take a step back from it, go away for a week, go away for a weekend, and not come back and be slammed. You're self-employed or a sufferpreneur otherwise. So if you're really serious about this game, you really want to make sure you've got what I call a win team, so you can get to what is next.
Yeah, and I think it's the dog wagging the tail or the tail wagging the dog. And sometimes, we get it. We want to be entrepreneurs for our schedule and the control and all this, but then unfortunately we end up letting the tail wag the dog and dictate what our time is, what our schedule is. And I think, like you said, getting out front, building that team around us will let us be the entrepreneurs and have all the spoils of that, in which we've always dreamed of.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Roy. You're beating my drum, man. I'm all over it.
All right. Well, before we go, tell us what is a tool that you use in your daily life, and it could be professional, it could be personal, something that you just feel adds a lot of value.
I use Loom a lot. I mentioned that earlier, but it's not just because it's show and tell. Listen, we probably learned 80% of what we needed to learn in school by the time we were done kindergarten. It's show and tell. And what I would tell you is not only is it so much more effective to show somebody and talk, because we can talk about 200 words per minute, but even a great typist can only type about 50 words a minute. If I'm doing a Loom screen capture and showing somebody something on my team and saying something like, I don't love this blue over here. See, you can change this or blah, blah, blah. What happens is they hear my tone and they're like, oh, okay, great. We're getting close. We just have to change this one thing. But if you type that out, not only would it take longer, but the tone might be misinterpreted, right? So to me, like, boy, oh boy, I'm lost without Loom. We just use that all day long for communication, really short little snippets of, clarification. So that's a little thing. And again, guys, it's free. So you can't go wrong with that.
I'll check that out.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us number one, who's your client? How do you help them? How they can reach you, but also how can we win the hour and eventually win the day?
Yeah. So you guys just reach out to me to tell me you heard me on this fantastic podcast and we'll be instant friends. You can check me out on any of the socials, reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's a great place as well. And the clients I work best with, they've usually been in business a couple of years, 5, and they just really have ambitions. They want to get their ideas to execution, but they're trapped in the admin and they look great on paper. You guys know who you are. Everyone thinks you're doing well, but you're still putting in as many hours as you did when you first started your business. And you're like, but it's kind of like your dark little secret. Cause I get people that pull me aside all the time after a podcast or anything. And they'll be like, yeah, Kris, what, like I'm doing well, but I'm putting in too many hours. So we have that. And for you, if you're newer in business, you could check out our outsourcing playbook for busy entrepreneurs coming soon. That's cool too. So yeah, I'm here to create a movement because I believe your business should support your life, not consume it. You shouldn't have to pay the price of your family, your health, and all that stuff for you to have a dream and get a business off the ground. That's not what it's about. You didn't start a business just to run a business. You had ambition. So let's get you on them.
Yeah, right. So how can they reach out and get a hold of you? Also, tell us where we can find the book as well.
Yeah, you can get the book on Amazon. You can also, if you want to listen to me in your car, check out my Win the Hour, Win the Day podcast. It's all on amazing general tips on business so you can get to your next win now. It could be anything from social media to sales, so do that. And yeah, you know what? You can reach out to me at Kris Ward, W-A-R-D, at winthehourwintheday.com. That's my personal email, Kris Ward at winthehourwintheday.com.
And that's Kris with the K.
It is K-R-I-S.
That's all right. Well, Kris, thank you so much again. Great information. Y'all reach out to Kris and let her help you put a team together. There's no reason to struggle any longer. So that's going to do it for another episode of the Business of Business podcast. You can find us, of course, at www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We are on all the major social media platforms, as well as all the major podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, please reach out. I'd be glad to get it added. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your business.